Everyone, welcome to my podcast, Naturellement, Audrey. This is Audrey's Scorepad. Here we love to explore and share on all things wellness, holistic and natural living, parenting, self-improvement, finding joy in our lives and creating the lives we want to live, and much more. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Naturellement Audrey. I'm your host, Audrey Scorepad. I wanted to just take a few minutes, a few seconds to say thank you for being here. This is my first episode I'm doing in English. So I'm from Montreal, Canada. I speak mainly in French at home, but I also learned English living in the West Island, but also growing up in Florida. So I'm born here in Montreal, but my parents moved to Florida when I was little. So I'm very bilingual. It's part of my life. And I absolutely wanted to invite people, guests that are inspiring to me, that have taught me a lot, and I think that have a message to share. And so, yes, I've been doing episodes in French, but I'm going ahead with that list of people I've had that are mainly Anglophone. So I want to share that with you guys. And for those of you discovering my podcast for the first time, I just want to give you a little bio of who I am. So, who is Audrey? Basically, I am a 33-year-old living in Quebec, Canada. Um, I am a mother of three. I have three children, two girls and a boy. I'm married to the love of my life, and I live a beautiful, privileged, healthy life, and I am so grateful for that. And I love sharing about health, wellness, holistic and natural living, parenting, self-improvement, whatever I learn about and am passionate about, I love sharing. I've been a communicator for my whole life. I used to host a TV show when I was younger, when I was a teenager here in Montreal. And so for me, when social media appeared, it was just a way for me to continue that, to keep sharing and showing up. And the podcast now, it's something that I've been wanting to do, and I launched it 12 weeks ago. And so, yeah, it's something that I've been thinking about and dreaming about since I became a mother, so 10 years ago. And finally, this year, I decided to launch it. So, I definitely am in the season of my life where I'm finding myself again a bit more, after having three children, three young children in the past few years, and really focusing on that and living it and enjoying it to the max. Now my children are in school, and so I am found with a bit more time for myself. And so I'm saying yes to more projects that I want and that feel aligned with what um, I truly want. So this podcast is one of those things. And once again, like just going with that inner voice of doing what I feel is right and going for things that are a big yes for me, is incorporating some episodes that are done in English with some Anglophone guests, because I feel like I love personally listening to episodes and podcasts that have Anglophone guests on them, and I love following people that are American, Canadian, whatever, that have that language as their first language. So I didn't want to limit myself, and so I'm honoring that side of me that's bilingual, and I want to open it up to people that speak English. So here you go. And for all those people that do follow me that are Anglophone, that are from the States, or friends that I have, I think are excited for me to do this. So I'm happy you guys are all here. I hope you will enjoy. And please, I invite you to comment or share or write to me if you have suggestions of people you'd like me to invite and have on the podcast. I'd love to hear your suggestions. So that was just a little bit on me. I invite you to follow my page on Instagram. My personal page is Audrey Scorepad. You'll find a little bit more about me, and I can definitely do a longer version in another episode if that is something you feel called to. For now, I will leave you with the subject of the day. We are talking about hormonal health. Yeah, see you soon, guys. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to this episode. I absolutely wanted to have Jessica Victoria on to speak about hormonal health and women's health. I have been following her for many years on her social media. So, Jessica Victoria is actually a certified holistic nutrition practitioner and a women's hormones and fertility specialist. And I have followed her work and her whatever she shares for the past, I want to say, almost 10 years. I think she has such an amazing energy and she's so insightful and knowledgeable. And I just love all she does for women. And I have learned a lot through her pages. And so I thought it was so important to have her on because as women, we go through so many hormonal changes in our lives. And I think having some tools to navigate through that is super key. So I had an amazing time talking with her, and we went through different subjects. I had a list of questions for her, and we touched on all the subjects in that hour, but I definitely had 1,000 more questions that popped up into my mind, and I feel like we'll definitely have her again on the podcast. So we talked about hormonal health balance, what it entails, and why it's crucial for all overall well-being. We talked about understanding how our bodies work so that we feel empowered in making the right choices that are personal to us regarding our health and our hormones. We talked about the most common hormone imbalances she encounters in her practice and what the typical symptoms are. We talked about some of the tools and freebies she has on her website that are amazing to help us navigate our hormonal health, such as her hormone checklist with the 4 systems, and also what role does diet play in our hormonal health, the nutritional supplements we might want to use or consider. We discussed the importance of gut health in relation to hormone function and how to optimize it. We also talked about early motherhood and postpartum, as it's something I've gone through in the past few years a few times. We've also talked about a fun subject, which was health trends that we see on social media, her take on it regarding hormonal health, which ones are maybe good and some maybe less. And then we finally talked about how she works one-on-one with people, with women on their hormones through personalized protocols. And yeah, so she had such amazing information and knowledge to share. And I really hope you guys enjoyed this talk as much as I did. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. We always love reading and answering and just feeling like we're all part of this community together. So thank you so much, you guys. I hope you enjoy. Have a good listen. Hi, Jessica. Thank you so much for being here today with me. How are you
Hi,
doing?
Audrey. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. Thank you.
Amazing. Guys, I'm so excited to have Jessica on because I have been following you for many years on social media. I don't remember how exactly, but I think I had maybe just Sky. My oldest was born, maybe one or two. And I was living in Laval at that time, and I think you were in that area too. And, anyways, I just really love the content you share. I feel like it's so insightful, educational, empowering too for women. You share a lot about women's health, obviously, hormonal health, and I love your recipes. I love the way you just speak. It's so natural and inviting, and everything just makes sense. And I've learned a lot with you too. So I'm so excited to have you today to talk about this, to talk about hormonal health, women's health, because I have personally, like as any other woman, like gone through different phases in my health and my hormonal journey, especially having children, like the just postpartum, like preconception, all that. And
Yep.
now I'm in a different phase too. My children are all like, I'm not breastfeeding anymore. So I'm kind of coming back to like the Audrey before, but also like age and time has passed. So it's a bit different, relearning a little bit also about my cycle and all that stuff. So I feel like it's a super interesting subject and we're going to dive into that. But first of all, I want to know what made you interested in helping women with their hormonal health and what is your story?
Yeah, totally. So it's true. It's so funny. I feel like ever since I got Instagram, I've been following you at least, and it's so, interesting how we've had like one baby and then pregnancy and we've shifted through all of these different seasons. And I think this is like a lot of what it's about, right? Like as women, we
Yeah.
shift through all of these different phases. And then it could start to get a little bit confusing. So that's just been so interesting. But for me, I got on the pill at a really young age. I think like a lot of women, a lot of my clients actually, I know had the same experience and just kind of blindly, whether it was for like managing period pain or whatever. So for me, I got on at a really young age and I was on the pill for really over a decade. And then it was only when I started to study holistic nutrition that I started to really, understand and learn some of the side effects that it could have, especially if you're on it long term. So at that point, I decided to come off and just give my body a little bit of a break, see, how I felt. And I really did start to see a lot of my symptoms that I was experiencing um, start to kind of go away. So it was like, the low mood, constantly feeling like I had this black cloud over me. I had a lot of like recurring infections and UTIs that I just couldn't get rid of no matter what. There was just a lot of things that lifted that I wasn't even aware were affecting me while I was on it. But then also, I didn't get my period back, right? And it was like 6 months, 8 months, 1 year, and it just wasn't coming back. And I think as women, it's something that we just intuitively know. Like, it's annoying, right? For some people, they might be like, oh, you're so lucky you didn't have to deal with your period. But I think that as women, we really just know intuitively that it's something's wrong when we're not getting our period, right? And so even though I didn't have to worry about my period, I was always feeling like, oh, like something's wrong with me, right? And I wasn't getting what I needed through my doctor. It was very hard to get testing. Nobody really knew what was going on. So I had to figure all that out for myself. And I think that was initially what started that kind of peak in interest to specialize in women's health as I was studying. Because really, when you're studying, it's kind of broad and you get to pick and narrow down what you want to do. And then I ended up getting pregnant and going through pregnancy and postpartum the first time. And then I cycled through some secondary infertility issues. So then that was another experience, and then postpartum anxiety with my second. So I've really been personally through all of the things that I help my clients out with, which in the moment was tough, but now I'm so grateful that I was really able to experience that firsthand because I could really connect with the women that I worked with, which is awesome. And I once heard someone say the greatest way that you can help people is to just help them through what you've struggled with, right? Make your mess your message. And that was just something clicked for me. And I was like, yeah, I have to help women with what I've been through because it's so needed. And it's so hard for women to get the answers that they're looking for. So, really, everything I've been through is what ended up becoming what I help other women with.
That's amazing. I love that. Make your mess your message. Yeah, that resonates. I love that. Amazing story. I'm sure a lot of women can relate to that. I was lucky enough, I think, to not personally ever go on the pill. I think, like, as a teenager, I remember, like, the question coming up, kind of, and my parents talking to me about it. But I just, like, intuitively felt like I was like, I don't want to put that in my body. And I
Yeah.
didn't know much about it. I didn't even study naturopathy at that point or nothing. I was like, no, I don't want that. So I feel like super lucky that I went that way, because for me personally, I know that's not the avenue I would have chosen now knowing what I know, and the other ways that are
Well, and
possible.
also not to say that it's never a good option. Also, like for the women that are on it, let's say to manage pain, like very severe pain conditions, like
Yeah.
endometriosis, for example, there are situations where it can be a tool while you're working on some of the more, deeper root cause issues where it can help you just live a normal life. So it's not to say that it's never a good option, but it's definitely not your only option.
Yes, exactly. That's what I also mean by that. Like I know
Yeah,
now that there's different options, and I feel like, I've been managing well by choosing differently.
totally.
Can you explain what hormonal health balance entails and why it's so crucial for overall well-being?
For sure. So, and honestly, I feel like now there's a lot going on online where people are saying like hormone balance as a term isn't really a thing. And I guess it's true in a way because as women, because we're shifting through these different phases throughout our cycle and our hormones are kind of going up and down depending on where we are in our cycle, you're never going to reach like a point where they're like balanced and, now they're not going to move and nothing's going to shift again. So I guess in terms of like the term, it's not necessarily correct, but we use it anyways, just because I feel like everybody generally understands what that means. But hormones are basically like little tiny messengers or like little chemical messengers, and they're constantly like chatting and connecting with the different hormonal glands, right? The endocrine system, the different glands of the body that make and secrete hormones. So you have like the hypothalamus and pituitary in the brain, you have your thyroid, your adrenals that make stress hormones, your ovaries that make your sex hormones. And so they're all kind of talking and connecting with each other to keep you balanced and regulated. And they manage everything from reproduction to metabolism, your energy, your mood, your sleep. So there's so many things that they're working on keeping, regulated and working well in the body. And so when they're not quote unquote balanced, then we start to see different symptoms pop up, right? So then we're going to see, the PMS, the mood, the irritability, the period related issues, ovulation issues, maybe even fertility issues, thyroid, right? Thyroid conditions are really, really common. I see that a lot with the clients that I work with. So that's really what hormone balance means. You don't want too much of them. You don't want too little. You need them to be kind of hitting optimal levels when they're supposed to.
Wow. And do you feel, well, I probably yes, because you do a lot of educating around how our bodies work, because I feel like that's not something we really learn as we grow up, how the woman's body works and the cycle and the phases and all of that. So do you feel like that's a big part of it, like understanding that to help us make, better choices for our own personal health and hormonal balance or health?
100% yes. Honestly, I would say this is like 95% of the work that I do is just teaching women how their body works. And I actually have a free digital uh, course. It's not a course, it's like a little digital webinar and ebook combo that women can download. And it's 25 minutes of just explaining how the menstrual cycle works, how their bodies work, what their hormones are doing in the different phases of our cycle. And then the ebook tells you like what you should be focusing on with your nutrition in each phase of the cycle, what type of workouts are supportive for each phase of the cycle. Because when you know what your body's doing and when it's doing it, you can, number one, be kinder to yourself, right? So many women that I work with, they're like, I was eating so healthy and I was doing all my workouts, but then all of a sudden I just like I couldn't make it out of bed. I couldn't like get to the workout. And then I was craving all these sweets or I was overeating. So then, I had to throw in the towel and I just said, you know what, whatever, I already messed up. So might as well just continue, right? But when you know what your hormones are doing, you can really predict, okay, my energy is probably going to be low because I'm in the second half of my cycle, the week maybe before my period. Maybe I need a little bit more fiber rich carbohydrates for energy. Maybe my workouts are going to be a little bit less intense. Maybe I'm going to take a little walk outside. So you're better able to predict what your body's going to need. And then also you're just being kinder to yourself and you're giving yourself that grace. And then that really makes it sustainable long term, right? Instead of being like, it's go, 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 got to be perfect 100% of the time. So I think just as women, even if you don't know anything about cycle syncing or, aligning your life and nutrition and workouts with your cycle, I think as women, we just intuitively know that we feel different throughout the month, right?
Totally, totally. Yeah. What's the first thing you think like we should be thought about it about hormonal health, about our bodies as young as, teenagers or just women in general?
Meaning like what should women be taught? Like how should
Yeah, like what's the first thing we should understand about our cycle? Is it like the phases, or
Oh, yeah. I think we should be learning more about ovulation. I
Mhm.
think as young, I know for me personally, I don't know for other women, but I think in general, we're taught a lot about menstruation, right? The bleed
Yes.
being like the main thing, right? In the cycle, when really it's ovulation.
Mm.
Ovulation is like the superstar of the cycle because everything is leading up to ovulation, right? The follicles are growing, it's producing estrogen leading up to ovulation. And then after ovulation, that's how we make progesterone to keep ourselves balanced, for the second half of the cycle. And without ovulation, the bleed that we get is not even a real bleed, right? So there's so much about ovulation that women don't know. And I think that also, sticks with them even their 20s and 30s when they're trying to have babies. They're feeling confused on when they should be trying, right? Because they're
Mm.
not really sure. There's this mystery around ovulation and there's, the ovulation sticks. And so I just feel like women should be taught more, or girls even should be taught more not just about menstruation, but about ovulation and what ovulation is and why it's important, right? For women
Mm,
in their long-term health, their breast health, their bone health, their heart health, right? So if we knew that ovulation was so important for our long-term health and it's so connected to, it's considered a fifth vital sign of health for women, right? So it's so connected to our overall health. If we knew how important ovulation was, I think we would think twice about taking something that shuts down ovulation, right? Like the birth control
right.
pill or hormonal contraceptives shut it down a lot of times. So I think understanding more about that would be really helpful.
Wow. So the link with the with like taking the pill, for example, is like basically the body's just like shutting down the production of the ovulation, right? So when you say
Yes.
the bleeding, how is it still bleeding then if there's no ovulation happening?
Yeah. So basically, and it's so funny because when they were creating the birth control pill all those years ago, there's really no point for the bleed, right? Because your body is not ovulating and creating those hormones naturally. So that little pack of sugar pills that are at the end, it's basically just your body kind of not getting the hormones that it needs to keep that lining intact, right? So when you
Mm.
stop taking the hormones, then your body will naturally shed a lining, but it's not a real true period because no ovulation occurred. And so when they first created the pill, they really put in that bleed to make women feel normal, quote unquote. Because again, as women intuitively know that when we're not bleeding, it's a normal process for us, that something must be wrong. So they really just added that in. But there are a lot of contraceptives that allow you to just skip through the periods altogether.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that. And would that make like, for people being on the pill for so many years, like yourself, and then you said like not having your period, like being regular, having difficulty. I've had a lot of friends that experience that, like stop the pill and then periods on and off, not really there. They're like so confused. Do you think that's just like the body kind of like having to like relearn or like what's that
Yes.
process about?
Yeah, so all of the hormonal systems are connected, right? And there is that connection between the ovaries and the brain, right? The pituitary, the hypothalamus and pituitary in the brain release the hormones to the ovaries and vice versa, and they're always connecting. So it's just a matter of post birth control reestablishing those connections, right? So that
Mm,
they could be doing the right thing, and that could take a little bit of time. For some women, they get their period back right away and things just resume as they were. And then for other women, it could take a little bit more time to reestablish that communication.
wow, okay. So interesting. What are the most common hormonal imbalances you encounter in your own practice, and what are their typical symptoms usually?
Yeah. So I typically teach women about the hormonal hierarchy. So women come to me with all different cocktails of hormonal symptoms, right? And so that's one thing that I think can get really confusing for women is like, okay, I have maybe symptoms of excess estrogen here, right? Maybe PMS or very heavy bleeding, lots of period pain, bloating, sleep issues, and then maybe I've been diagnosed with low thyroid function or and then maybe I'm very stressed. So they're having symptoms in different categories of hormone imbalance, right? And then it could be confusing. Okay, what do I tackle first, right? What do I kind of start with? Because there's so much and there's so much information online and there's so many supplements available, right? So it can get really confusing. But that's why I created the hormone checklist because that really helps women to put their symptoms into categories. Um, and hormone imbalances can really, boil down to only four different root cause issues in my experience. So
Okay.
those are blood sugar imbalances, so issues with insulin, uh, high stress hormones like cortisol, high cortisol, which can eventually lead to low cortisol over time, poor digestion and gut health, and then sluggish detox pathways. So generally, we try to see, okay, where do you have the majority of your symptoms? And if you're high in all categories, then you really got to start with area 1 and 2, because
Hmm.
insulin and cortisol, or your stress hormones and your blood sugar, really sit at the very top of this kind of hormone pyramid. And if those two hormones are out of balance, well, then that's going to trickle down and it's going to start to cause issues with thyroid and estrogen and progesterone and melatonin for sleep. So if you're not tackling those two things first, and those are really, really um, they respond really well to changes with your diet and lifestyle, right? So even if you don't even take a supplement yet, um, working on balancing your blood sugar and managing your stress hormones are like the two most important things. And I have literally never worked with a client one on one that didn't need help in those areas ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. How, like, yeah, that's so cool. So, and that, I think you have that system up there, that hormone checklist available, right, for download too. It's free on
Yeah.
your website.
It's free
Super
on my website.
interesting. Yeah, amazing. And when you talk about blood sugar regulation and diet, like how is that like applicable? How, where do people start with that? Like if you want to make changes?
Yeah, so basically, we're trying to keep our blood sugar levels balanced throughout the day. And the way you do that is by incorporating more healthy fats, fiber, and protein. So I really like to focus on helping women in what they're adding into their diet instead of taking away. Again, my goal is always to help them make sustainable changes that don't require them to give up everything that they love, never eat anything sweet again, right? So what can we add to our meals to really make sure that we are keeping it balanced and not allowing it to really give our blood sugar a big spike, and then obviously we get a big spike in insulin from that, right? And then whatever goes up must come down low, and then when our blood sugar goes low, inevitably from that spike we'll start to feel irritability. We're going to need sugar and coffee to keep us going throughout the day. We're going to have trouble with sleep, so trouble with mood. So all of that, all of those symptoms are signs. But in the checklist, I also go through all the other symptoms you might be experiencing if you have blood sugar dysregulation. But just focusing on a high protein breakfast that's between like 25 and 35 grams of protein is a really great way to start. Making sure all of your meals have protein, some sort of healthy fat, and a source of fiber. So
Mm.
fiber are, different types of plant foods, vegetables, fruits, nuts and seeds, legumes, all that sort of thing. And that would be really the best way to start. And I would say just being mindful of your intake of stimulants like coffee and sugar, especially by themselves. And making sure that you're not going super long without eating, right? So sometimes I'll see women who drink maybe just a coffee, they get going, and then they don't eat until hours later. You're really setting yourself up for, a little bit of a blood sugar roller coaster.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that because I've gotten better with that. But like eating in the morning, I wasn't so much, into that because I was like not naturally that hungry. But then I started working out a lot, like way more, in the past like 2 years. And I was like, okay, no, I gotta fuel my body, right? I'm still like naturally more inclined, and I feel like my body craves more like a smoothie because I've been drinking those kind of things for many years, but I try to incorporate, like that added, like the fiber. I add like chia seeds or flax or whatever, like protein sometimes. But yeah, like I know that like fasting in the morning isn't the best because I feel that crash, or else, and I just know like I get irritable and just like not in the best mood. So yeah, I can definitely see how that has impacted also in my hormonal health. And I've always dealt with like acne in my life. Like I had severe, well, maybe not severe acne, but I had a lot of acne during my adolescence. And since having kids, it was like, it wasn't there so much, But then since I've stopped breastfeeding and like I'm just like, like my body's back to my old self in a way, and I definitely feel like it'll flare up sometimes when I'm definitely like stressed out or I'm not sleeping enough, and then also if I'm like fasting too long in the morning, if I get too long before eating my breakfast, especially if I'm pushing my body like with a workout in the morning, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I know what's going on, but because the
Yeah,
body just doesn't lie, right? It shows up.
totally. For
Yeah,
sure.
that's yeah. It's like but then man, it happens. They're like, yeah, I should have listened, And it's like I need my 8 hours of sleep, and just, sometimes I'm running low, like waking up at 5:30 in the morning. You kind of get addicted to it,
Yeah.
you get it like you want that feeling of like getting that me time in the morning and like working out, but then it's like yeah, it hits me like a wall, like get that like fatigue, and then that acne that flares up. So, anyways, so interesting, so insightful. I love it. Um, yeah, so I'm talking about stress, like personally, like how it affects my hormonal health. But do you feel like that's a huge or a big component for most women, like stress
Oh
impacting
yeah.
their, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, I also feel like even when you have this information and you know what you should be doing, it's still always going to be something that we have to actively work on, right? You're never going to get to a point where, okay, I don't have to worry about blood sugar balance anymore. I don't have to worry about my stress hormones anymore, right? It's even as someone who helps women with this, it's life is
Yeah.
busy. We always have to actively be working on it. So for sure, me too. But stress, I would say, is huge, especially because we have so many stressors today that weren't there, even just a decade ago, right? So especially with just the way we use technology now, social media, it can be so easy to just like fall in that trap of like mindless scrolling, especially like first thing in the morning and before bed. There's just so many different stressors, our food, the way the food is grown, the chemicals that are in our food, right? There's not just emotional stress or mental stress. There's also chemical stress and physical stress, right? If your workouts are not properly aligned to let's say where you are in your cycle or where you're at, right? So there's different types of stressors, and just being mindful of that can help us to make better choices throughout the day and in different cycle phases. So this is really something that I help women with, because I feel like it's something that women, especially after COVID, because with COVID, a lot of women started working from home, and then there was a lot of those that work life balance or those boundaries kind of started to get all mixed together. And so all of a sudden, women were working through their lunch break. They didn't like stop working into the evening. So they were like working through the evening, not taking time to get outside for a walk, right? So, really being mindful of the things that are going to be supportive for managing that cortisol and those stress hormones. Because, like I said, it really sits at the top of that hormone pyramid. And when you have high stress hormones, your body just doesn't feel safe and supported. Your body needs to feel safe and supported in order to ovulate so that you can make your hormones like progesterone to kind of prevent that irritability and those PMS symptoms. Um, and it's really connected to everything. Our stress can make anything worse, right? Any pain conditions, like you said, acne, anything you have, stress, if you Google it, stress can make it worse, right? So we really got to be mindful of that. And so some of the things that I always share with my clients is to like really be mindful of screen time first thing in the morning and before bed. You really got to create some habits that around those times, even if it's just the first 15 minutes when you wake up and the last 15 minutes before you go to bed. Put your phone away. It's the one thing that in my group coaching, in my one-on-one coaching, women have always said, like, wow, I really saw a huge difference when I put my phone down. And it can really creep up, right? It can really, like, we could say, okay, we want to create boundaries, and then we find ourselves reaching for it all day long. So that's one thing that you could do that's really easy. Um, Sunlight every single day, whether it be having your morning coffee or tea by a window, taking a walk, sitting outside, getting that sunlight, something that you can really do to help your body make melatonin at night so you can get that good quality sleep. Movement, of course, we need movement. We don't want to be working out to the point where we're feeling exhausted and drained, but some sort of movement that feels restorative and good for your body is amazing. In my Go with the Flow, it's that free webinar that I have. I teach women how we are more susceptible to spiking our stress hormones and our cortisol in the second half of our cycle. And so you really got to be mindful of the intensity of your workouts then. And or if you're extremely stressed and maybe feeling burnt out, then maybe you watch the intensity all cycle long. And of course, during times of stress, like, postpartum, when you're not sleeping well, maybe you're not eating as well as you normally would, being mindful of that. And reducing your intake of stimulants, your sugars, your coffee, all the things that spike your blood sugar and make your, rev up those stress hormones. And then, of course, nourishing your body with nutrients like magnesium and vitamin C and B vitamins. I have a really great recipe for an adrenal cocktail on my Instagram. That is one of my most popular posts. It is really a natural energizer. Like if you just need that little afternoon pick me up, if you tend to get that little energy crash around like 2, 3 o'clock, it is such a great little pick me up. I love to do it also in the mornings when I'm feeling extremely like more stressed. I'll do it twice a day, but it's basically a blend of, a source of vitamin C, a source of saturated fat. We need the fats for our body to actually make hormones, some trace minerals to really nourish the adrenals, and some potassium rich coconut water. And I'm telling you, it is better than any afternoon coffee.
Love it. It's so good, huh?
It's
Just the
amazing.
taste of it. Yeah, even my kids like it. Um, that's just some key, like fun, ways to incorporate like good, nourishing foods. It makes it fun and
Yep.
easy to make too, for sure. I love that. Um, I like how you talk about, training, your trainings, and because I'm really into that right now, like working out and trying to really listen to my body and where I'm at in my cycle and which phase I'm in, as much as I'm really into like the body lifting, the body weight, the using some weights and stuff. And like, I feel like every day I just kind of want to do that. But then some days where I feel like, okay, no, like I am in my phase where I feel just I need more quiet, more calm, and be gentler. I do try to respect that. So how would you say like you go maybe personally about that? Like, because I know you like to train too, and you do bar or Pilates. I've seen you do like stuff. Even you're a teacher of that, no?
Yeah, I used to teach bar. I was teaching
Okay.
bar for a few years. And then after I had my son, I tried for a couple of months after I had him, but the schedule of it just didn't end up
Yeah.
working out. So I'm taking a break now. Maybe I'll go back to it. I don't know. But I always have been someone to really need to like change workouts all the time because or else I just get bored. So I kind of like always jump to different things. Right now,
Yeah.
I've just been really not pushing myself too much, especially having my son home with me and he's still not like sleeping through the night. We're still breastfeeding the whole thing. So I'm not pushing myself too much, but I do walks pretty much every day. And then I try to do some sort of like strength training 3 times a week. That's like my goal.
Mm.
And nothing crazy. I do like 25 to 30 minute strength training workout. But that's really just been my little routine for the past, I would say, year. But I'm sure I'll switch it up
Yeah, I'm kind of the
eventually.
same. Yeah, for sure. I feel you. When is the moment in our cycle where we normally or would should go for like the more intense workouts, let's say.
Yeah, so after your period, as your estrogen levels start to rise and as you start to approach ovulation, generally we have more energy and we're more resilient to,
Mm.
those triggering those stress hormones. So I would say if you're balanced, if you have a regular period, you're sleeping well, you're not overly stressed, you feel strong, and you want to push yourself a little bit more, after your period through ovulation, even a little bit after ovulation and then maybe tapering down in that week before you're expecting your period, that would really be the time to do it.
Yeah, I love that. That's how I think like, by learning all of this and like really implementing it and like just, I feel like naturally my body really knows. Like our body knows like naturally, but when your mind and your body, like there's like, everything's speaking to each other. Like you just like get into that knowing of like, oh yeah, it's like, I don't necessarily know the exact day, today, but
Yep.
I feel like, yeah, no, like I had planned this, but let's do that, let's bring it down a little
And it
bit,
doesn't
like
even have to be like perfect to
yes.
the day, but you go with how you feel, you go with your energy. And I think the main takeaway is just like listen to your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. I love that. You talked a lot about nutrition and your adrenal cocktail. Are there any nutritional supplements that you think are super beneficial, maybe in a general sense, just for anybody, no matter what, maybe the symptom, or if you have specific ones you can share, but like as like a starter, hormonal
Yeah.
health, nutritional supplements?
Yeah. So the first thing I know that supplements are really popular and they're always the first thing when I work with clients. They're like, what supplement can I take? Right? Because it's just so exciting to take a supplement and to start a new supplement routine, right? There's so much hope in that, I feel.
Hmm.
But I want to just first say that supplements can never like make up for like a lack of nutrition or poor sleep habits or high like stressful lifestyle habits, that sort of thing. So really making sure that you're working on those like foundational pieces. um is should be really the first thing that you're doing. And then the second thing is they should be personalized, right? So your supplement routine should be personalized to your body's specific needs. So not just, the popular supplement that you're seeing everywhere on Instagram or through an influencer or that your friend was taking. It should really be personalized to your body's needs. And then the third thing is you really want to make sure that it is high quality, because there's supplements everywhere. It's a huge industry. The wellness industry is a huge industry. And so obviously we're going to see the supplements everywhere, right? Pharmacy or, big box stores and that sort of thing, where quality is not always going to be their number one priority, right? A lot of the time it comes down to the dollar, and there's not a whole lot of regulation around nutritional supplements. So you really want to make sure that you're buying supplements, that are tested well and you trust the quality of those brands. So that's something that I talk about also in the checklist. I have a link where women can go and purchase high quality supplements and look through my favorites category. So I have favorites for, stress. I have favorites for PMS. I have favorites for blood sugar. So there's all of those categories that they could look through. And you could even look through them and then go purchase them at a health food store. I don't make money off of it. But I would say if there's one supplement that can really help every category in the checklist, like I mentioned, there's, blood sugar, stress, the gut, your detox pathways, magnesium. Magnesium is like, I don't think there's someone on earth that couldn't benefit from magnesium. I live on that mountain. I tell it to everyone. I think so many of us are deficient in magnesium, just the way our food is grown. Our stressful lifestyles really deplete us of magnesium. So if there's one thing that can help with everything from like period pain, heavy bleeding, sugar cravings, anxiety and irritability, even digestive issues and constipation, right? We need to be moving out excess hormones that were no longer needed, and hormone disrupting chemicals need to be moved out of the body. Constipation is such a huge issue for women. And I always say, like, if you're not eliminating every day, that is likely going to lead to those symptoms of high estrogen, right? Because it's really in the gut that we break down and metabolize estrogen and then move it out of the body. And so if it's being reabsorbed and recirculated, then we're going to see a lot more of those symptoms that are associated with high estrogen. So that's number one. But I would say magnesium in general. If you're a woman with a period, magnesium.
And when you say magnesium, is it like something you take like every day, and which type of magnesium too? Like magnesium citrate, magnesium glycinate? Is there one specific, and is it like an everyday thing no matter where you are in your cycle?
Yeah, you can take magnesium every day. I normally increase the dose in my luteal phase, so after ovulation, when we can start to see symptoms like PMS pop up, and then through menstruation to kind of prevent cramping and all that sort of thing. I usually recommend magnesium glycinate for like general hormone support and stress. And then for women dealing with more constipation, I'll recommend a magnesium citrate just to help get things moving. It's a little bit more stimulating on the digestive system. Those are the two that I usually work with. I know there are some other forms that are better for brain health, et cetera. But in the work that I do, it's women who are generally either looking to, help with stress and hormones or more constipation. So those would be the two that I recommend.
Perfect. Are there any other nutritional supplements you want to highlight, or you say you want to like focus on magnesium?
Yeah, of course. I guess it depends on what your body needs, right? If you're looking to really support your adrenals, then you want to focus more on, things like vitamin C. Vitamin C is really nourishing for the adrenals, and your B vitamins. If you're looking to support more blood sugar, then I would say, focus on protein and magnesium, and you're, increasing that fat, fiber, protein, and maybe some magnesium. It would be a good place to start. If you're looking to focus on gut health, we love a probiotic. We love also maybe a supplement to help reduce inflammation in the gut that maybe has some aloe and some glutamine, right? So it just depends, I guess, on where you're scoring high on the checklist and what your body needs. So it's always going to be a little bit more personalized.
For sure. I like that. And I feel like personally too, like when my gut health is off, I feel like giving my body all these supplements is not doing it necessarily a favor. I feel like I always need to address that first. For me,
Yeah.
it's at the base, it's like on the pillars, and I know it's, you believe that too. So, how does gut health, like how do you address that first? And do you see women like having a lot of issues regarding that?
Yeah, so the gut the health of our gut is really connected to every system, right? So, I mean, it's no surprise that it would affect our hormones also. Um, but yes, I do see women experiencing gut related issues. Like I mentioned, the bloating
Mhm.
and constipation seem to be like the two that really are the biggest and or the most common that I see. But again, when we look at the hormonal hierarchy, sometimes when we just address their stress, a lot of their symptoms will go, right? So if we continue to maintain the level of stress and not, make changes to our lifestyle and our sleep quality and all of that, and then we're just trying to kind of like make up for it with, all of the probiotics and maybe that like supplements for gut lining or digestive enzymes or whatnot, we're not really getting the root, right? We're not really targeting the actual issue. So that's why I always say you start with blood sugar, you start with your stress, and then then you reassess. Okay, am I still feeling bloated? Is it still as bad? Generally, if you were really stressed, it won't be. Um, but then at that point, you can see if maybe a little bit of digestive support would be necessary, whether it be an enzyme supplement or digestive bitters to help you break down your foods, or maybe you notice that you're having a lot of inflammation, and so you want to work on healing up the gut lining. There's different issues that could pop up, and depending on where your symptoms are and what you're experiencing, your protocol will look a little bit different. Um, but also, like I mentioned, the estrogen, right? Our estrogen, after it's done its job in the body, it has to go through the liver and then to the gut to really be broken down and eliminated. And there's actually a colony of bacteria in the gut specifically whose job it is to metabolize and break down estrogen called the estrobolome, which when I learned that, I was like fascinated by that. So if it's kind of like if there's a dysbiosis where you have an overgrowth of bacteria that shouldn't be there, and then the good bacteria are kind of having a hard time growing, well then you can have that issue where you're kind of recirculating more estrogen than you should be instead of eliminating it out of the body, right? And so that's when the bloating could pop up, sleep issues could pop up, hot flashes could pop up, heavy periods, all of those things that we associate with excess estrogen. So just really interesting how the gut is so connected to our sex hormones as well. But then also inflammation, right? There's a lot of women that struggle with inflammatory conditions and pain conditions, whether it be endometriosis or very severe period pain. Even sometimes gut infections can even be at the root of some fertility issues that are hard to diagnose or you don't know where they're coming from, right? So there's a lot of things that could go wrong when your gut bacteria are not balanced or you have, some inflammation or damage to your gut lining.
I feel like I worked a lot on my digestion, in the past years. And whenever I'm traveling, I don't know, it's a thing also just not being at home and not feeling like, I'm in my things or eating the foods I normally eat. But if I feel bloated, my digestion is slowed down or sluggish. I get like all these PMS symptoms, like, like I actually feel the cramps and stuff, which I never get. I just like, for me, it's like, okay, oh, today I'm on my period, like I can see, but I didn't feel anything before. So I definitely feel that connection and have seen it with my eyes, like, and lived through that. So yeah, when my digestion is super good and everything flows, then the rest goes along well. That's so
Yeah.
interesting. Thank you for that. Um, so for women going through early motherhood and postpartum, because I've gone through that, many times, and so have you. What natural therapies or protocols do you suggest to ease the transition? Because you definitely feel, I don't know for you, but you definitely feel that like after giving birth, it's like, wow, it changes. Like there's like something that happens in the body, and then you're producing this milk, and like, like everything else is happening. And I just feel like for me, like hair loss, I've had that, especially with my first child. It wasn't so bad with the others, like because I learned a bit more. But is there any suggestions you have for women going through that?
Yeah, been there. And I think also like depending on like your baby, right? Like some babies are just, I mean, they're all challenging, but some babies are better sleepers or don't cry as much, right? So all of these things can affect how you're feeling and how your body's responding. I know for my daughter, it didn't feel like that hard of a transition because she was sleeping well, like very early on, and so I was getting sleep, right? And able to kind of, she was more of a calm baby. So I was able to like make a meal for myself. So all of these little things. Whereas my son was more like high needs, right? He wasn't really sleeping. He's still not sleeping through the night. He was, he wanted to be on me all the time. So I guess that will also affect it. But I would say it's really a combination of like nutrition and lifestyle and self-care strategies that are really going to help you to kind of get there. Um, and for some women, it might just take a couple of months. For me personally, with my second, it took me almost 2 years to really start to feel even like a little bit normal. So I would say just don't put pressure on yourself to really like bounce back. Just give yourself that time to really replenish your body with nutrients. It takes so much out of us as women to carry a baby, to, give birth to a baby, to feed a baby from our bodies sometimes, if that's an option that you're choosing. So really making sure that you're replenishing the nutrients. I always say, continue to take your prenatal, work on your nutrition, try to either prepare meals like in your pregnancy so that you have things to eat in your freezer. Rely on family or friends if you can for support to like make you a meal. Like don't feel bad to say yes or accept help. You know, there like I think pride and goes out the window, right? After it's just survival mode. Accept the meal, accept the help for sure. Um and also continue to take your prenatal for a couple of months after, even if you're bottle feeding and you're not breastfeeding. I would say, in that fourth trimester, that 3 months after postpart, after you give birth, continue to take your prenatal so that you're not lacking in any vitamins or minerals. Sometimes it's, a depletion of minerals can cause a lot more of that hair loss and stuff. So continue your prenatal, and I would say even continue the prenatal while you're breastfeeding, like until you have that time to really work on your meals and make sure that you're getting your adequate nutrition from your meals. Rely on that a little bit. Um, Protein, right? Making sure you're eating enough protein. This is something that a lot of women struggle with postpartum, is getting enough protein. But things like our hair is made up essentially out of protein, right? So, and of course, we need it for that blood sugar balance to keep away that, those feelings of anxiety, right? When our blood sugar levels dip low, then we're going to feel more anxious and more nervous and more stressed out. So, working on that blood sugar with your protein, healthy fats, and fiber. And also sleep, right? Try to sleep, when you can. I know it's not always possible to sleep when the baby's sleeping, but if you're feeling extra tired, maybe give yourself that grace during one of the naps or something to just lie down and, put the phone away, don't scroll, really take that time to rest and replenish, maybe some mindfulness. Again, use some help if you can, get some help to just come in and, you know, get some time for yourself. It'll be probably the best thing that you could do to kind of get back to feeling more like yourself.
Yeah, totally. I like that. And I feel like also we know our baby's best and we know what our needs are too, And I think it took me, having two children and then the third, I was like, okay, like this is more what I think I need and I should listen to my body more. And I've always like, like the co-sleeping thing for me, like sleeping with my babies was just a way for me to really get more sleep, that's why it worked for us. It worked for me because for me it was just the best way to keep my sleep uninterrupted. And I felt like that was so key in the healing postpartum and just like, navigating all of that and keeping my energy levels good. Because I feel like when my energy levels were good, like the rest, was easier.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot about listening to your bodies and asking for help and saying yes to help. Definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Um, Earlier, you talked about some health trends we see on social media that, there's just so much information out there. Sometimes it's hard to navigate through that and see like, okay, is this a good trend or not so good? What are some that you have seen maybe lately or in the past year, whatever, that you think are, that are key or that deserve to stay or make their ways into our lifestyles and some that aren't as good?
Okay, I love this question. I thought this was so fun.
Okay,
So
cool.
intermittent fasting, I think this
Yeah.
is kind of like it's a yes and it's a no for me. It's so popular online, right? I see a lot of my clients who fast, in the mornings. They're not eating breakfast. They're maybe just doing a coffee. And I've seen that women who do longer fasts, so like longer than let's say 14 or 15 hours, sometimes they're doing like 16 to 18 hours, right? Because we've seen, people talk about the studies that show how good it is for us, right? But in
Mm,
reality, the studies weren't done on menstruating. right? It was
Yes.
men and it was women who are not cycling anymore. So there's not a whole lot of data to show what the effects are for menstruating women. And I've seen it actually really cause menstrual irregularities, right? They'll be sending me DMs, my period is late, or I said, you probably just didn't ovulate on time, right? So I would say be really careful with the intermittent fasting. I talk about this in my free Go with the Flow webinar that you can find on my website. But we talk a little bit about cycle supportive fasting instead, where again,
Mhm.
after your menstruation, when your metabolism kind of it increases a little bit, so your it decreases, sorry, a little bit, so your energy will go up, your metabolism will go down, and so really you can fast a little bit longer. You're not going to cause that triggering of the stress hormones as easily with the fasting, but I would say try to stick in that kind of like 13 max 14-hour range to be more kind of supportive, and be really careful with that, especially if you're trying to get pregnant and you really want to make your body feel really safe and supported to
Mhm.
ovulate regularly. I would say I wouldn't recommend fasting in your preconception phase or postpartum phase, or while breastfeeding or anything like that. But if you're feeling strong and you want to incorporate a little bit of it, you want to get some of the benefits of fasting, try to stick in that 13 to 14-hour range and then do it in the right time of your cycle. So that was one that I thought was interesting.
Cool.
The second one is wearable tech. So this is
Oh
another
yeah.
one. So like things, monitors that you can either wear on
Mhm.
your finger or on your arm while you're sleeping or throughout the day, that monitor your heart rate or your sleep at night. And it also tells you your basal body temperature, which of course is connected to we can connect it to our cycle, right? We know that by monitoring our basal body temperature, we're able to see when we've ovulated, because once we ovulate, our body makes progesterone, and then that will increase our basal body temperature, right? So we're able to confirm ovulation with the basal body temperature. And then
Mhm.
also our temperature, we can also be a reflection of things like thyroid function. So there's so much that we could learn from that. And so I don't always think that it's necessary. And I also talk about the lazy girl, the lazy girl fertility awareness method, which is something that I do because I think at this point I know my cycle, I know where I'm at, I know what signs to look for.
Yeah.
So I kind of just, I wear it when I know I'm kind of in that ovulation phase, I confirm it and then I don't wear it again. But if you're someone that wants to learn more about your cycle, you want to know if you're ovulating, you want to know if you ovulate early, if you want to ovulate, if you ovulate late, if you're what's up with your thyroid, what's up with your progesterone levels, you can get so much from just wearing this device, either the one that you wear on your finger or your armband. I use Temp Drop with
Okay, I was gonna
for
ask.
myself. Yeah, and I use
Yeah.
that with my clients as well. And I have a discount code linked in my Instagram. So you can find that there and you can look at their website and read a little bit more about it. But it's really easy to wear at night. It syncs up. There's no um, like EMF signals while you're sleeping or
Yeah.
anything like that. So
Okay.
just something to note. But yeah, you can learn so much about your hormones and your cycle from tracking it with a wearable tech device.
So interesting. I love that. Okay. Cool. Are there any other trends you want to talk about or?
Um, the only other one I would say is, I mean, there's so many, right? There's like,
Yes.
and I've talked about, and I do some of these on my Instagram too, like the raw
Yeah.
carrot salad and the seed
That's what
cycling and
exactly. That's what brought me, like, inspired the question actually, because I love
oh,
how you just, yeah, you touch upon those. So I thought it was interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know especially like TikTok is really big on those types of things, like specific to the foods. And like I mentioned in that post with the raw detox salad, it's supposed to help with detoxing estrogen. And carrots are antioxidant and fiber rich. So I guess anything else that's antioxidant and fiber rich are also going to be helpful. But I mean, they're fun ways to get in these foods regardless. Right.
Yes.
So I debunk some of those on my Instagram. But then the other one that's been really popular lately is cycle syncing, or again, like aligning your life and your workouts and everything with your cycle, which I just think
Mhm.
is so, so key for women. I know even like women in business, like women who have like podcasts and Instagram profiles that do like social media marketing and business marketing, they're starting to tie in how the cycle can really help you to be more productive, right? Because we're better at kind of initiating tasks and doing things like that in the first half of our cycle, and then the second half we're better at details and organization and closing up all those little things that we kind of push away, right, in the first half. So it can help you in literally every area of life.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow. And then I want to go toward, because we're nearing the end now. I want to know, how do you personalize protocols and plans for hormonal health, and what tests or assessments?
So I use a series of detailed intake forms. It covers like medical history, lifestyle, your nutrition, all the things to really look at, what changes need to be made in terms of like foundation of health. Like I said, I always like to start there: diet, lifestyle, chemical exposures, all that sort of thing. And then it depends on what the goal is. Sometimes we'll stick with that. And then if it's more a client who has fertility goals, has been trying for a while, is not really sure what's going on with their cycle, if they're ovulating, etc., then we'll do some fertility. I'll teach them how to use fertility awareness method, kind of similar to what I was talking about with the wearable tech device. You don't have to have a wearable tech device in order to do fertility awareness method. You can use a simple, really cheap basal body temperature thermometer, and also teaching them about their cervical fluid changes. So this method of using basal body temperature and cervical fluid changes, or cervical fluid observations, and how that changes throughout the cycle, um, it's called the symptothermal method. And like I said, with the wearable tech devices, it could just teach you so much about your cycle and your hormones and what your hormones are doing in each of the different phases. So between the intake forms and the fertility awareness method coaching, we can really get so much done. But sometimes I will, and often I do recommend that they have testing done through their medical practitioner as well. And honestly, this is one thing that I think clients struggle with the most, because a lot of the times doctors will push back when you ask them for testing. But if they know what they need, they know what their body's doing, they know what to ask for, because they're like, no, I took my basal body temperature and my BBT is low in the second half of my cycle. So maybe something's up with my progesterone. Can you test my? So they're knowing what to ask for. They're knowing how to advocate for themselves. And then they're knowing how to use the system to get what they need out of it. And they're like, there's nobody who can tell you anything when you know exactly what's going on, right?
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And what would you look at through those tests that they'd have? Like, I know it can be like very specific to each person, but is it like you're talking about progesterone levels or estrogen, or is that typically what you look at, or
Well, sometimes, a lot of the times it's thyroid. So honestly, it can be
thyroid?
really hard to get thyroid testing, the right types of thyroid testing, because generally doctors will test just like TSH, maybe T3, T4, but
Mhm.
there's so many other tests that you could do: reverse T3, reverse T4, thyroid antibodies, right? But doctors are hesitant to go that far and go that deep when there could be something up there that's causing the symptoms. Sometimes it's cortisol, stress hormone. Sometimes it's blood sugar, insulin. Vitamin D levels is another big one, right? Iron levels is another big one. Um, and so just basically knowing what to ask for, and knowing that estrogen and progesterone should be tested at different times in the cycle, right? Estrogen is more dominant in the first half, and then we have to test our progesterone after ovulation in order to get a good reading. So just knowing when to ask for what and how to advocate for yourself, depending on what you're looking to address.
Wow. Uh, by working with all these women over the years, is there like one thing or one story, maybe is there a one success story, or like something that has, stayed with you, or that has had such a positive impact? Or maybe it's that, or maybe it's one thing that you see most clients do and then see the transformation happen, by doing one specific thing.
Yeah. Okay. So one
It
client
wasn't a
that,
question. It
oh,
wasn't a question. Sorry. It just came up to me and I was like, oh, I have to ask
that's
her.
okay. No, one client that comes to mind is this woman. She was trying for her second baby, and I think that secondary fertility issues are so common, more common than women think, right? We have one
Mm.
baby, and then it can be like kind of shocking when you're trying for another one. You're like, okay, but I already did it once. Why is it taking so
Mhm.
long, right? And it could be really hard. And that's personally was my experience too. And I think that it ties into just, you're more depleted after the first one, especially if you're not eating well, or you're not sleeping well, or you're more stressed, right? All that adrenal type stuff, or stress hormones. And so this one particular client, she was trying for her second baby. She had been trying for almost a year. She knew a lot about her hormones. She knew a lot about her cycle. She knew, what to look for in terms of cervical fluid and when to try, but it still wasn't happening. And so we started doing the fertility awareness method together, that symptothermal method, where she was charting her cervical fluid changes. And then also we were doing the basal body temperature changes. And after one full cycle of charting, we were able to see that in the second half of her cycle, her temperatures were lower than they should be. So they should be kind of like reaching about 98 degrees Fahrenheit, but they were kind of hovering in the low 97s, which she also had a little bit of spotting, right? So generally when we see spotting or some, premenstrual bleeding, it could tell us that your progesterone levels are dropping off. So that
Mm.
little bit of a shorter second half of the cycle with a little bit of the spotting and then the lower temperatures told me that her body wasn't making the progesterone, right? That she needed to really hold that lining in place. And it was just the simple swap of saying, okay, we need to make sure you're sleeping well. We need to take away the scrolling before bed. You need to get outside for some sunlight first thing in the morning or throughout the day. And you're going to take your magnesium and you're going to take your B and your B complex and up your vitamin C intake. She was pregnant the next cycle. And so that
Oh
was
my
just
gosh.
it's the little tiny changes that sometimes you just, you know, you don't
Yeah,
think,
that's why
but
it's amazing to be able to like have somebody like you to like know like just work with and like sometimes we have these questions with our bodies and we think we're doing the right thing and sometimes we are, but there's just that like, one little key that we need help with, and that's an amazing story. I love that. Wow, that's
yeah,
incredible. Our bodies are so intelligent and it's amazing the tools we have nowadays too to like, help us see what can be going on and how some
totally.
some just natural little add-ons or switches can
Or
make
even
the difference.
increasing calories, right? How many
Yes.
clients I've had didn't have their period for 10 months or over a year and their doctor doesn't know why. And then I'm like, you need to eat more food. And then they're like, I got my
Yeah.
period, you know?
Wow.
Sometimes it's
Yes.
really the simple, simple things.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah.
love all of it. Like, I feel like we could talk for hours, and I'm like, man, like next time let's talk about like fertility, maybe, like let's
Yeah,
explore more that subject. I just
totally.
find like there's so many interesting things. You said
Oh, yeah.
amazing, like you shared amazing information. I feel like every time you were talking, I was like, oh, I feel like I could go, like, should have asked you all these other sub questions, but like I want to focus on like what we had as a core to start, and I definitely want to have you back. Like, this was just amazing. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, like just like everything was great. Um, I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you so
much.
much. Yeah, thank you. And I want to just invite you now to just maybe share where people can find you if they want to contact you for your services, and also maybe your Instagram page, whatever you want to share. I Go
Yeah.
ahead.
So you can find me at J Victoria Health on Instagram, and also at jvictoriahealth.com. You can find my free hormone checklist to see what the root cause of your hormonal symptoms are on my website, as well as the Go with the Flow webinar and ebook combo to help you really learn about your cycle and the different phases of your cycle. And also, I'll be putting out this summer my digital course, Balancing Hormones Naturally, where basically I'm giving you all of the solutions for those root cause hormone issues in the checklist. So if you score high in a certain area and you want to start making some changes, or maybe you score high in a few different areas and you want to start making some changes, it's going to be a really simple kind of go at your own pace with easy to implement and non-restrictive actionable steps that you could take.
It's amazing. Thanks so much for that.
Thank you.
Yay. I hope you have a wonderful day and we'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.